Hello everyone, and welcome to our Banned Books Week webinar series featuring comics creators and librarians in conversation on topics centered around censorship and intellectual freedom. My name is Brandy Hamlin and I'll be the host of this webinar. I'm a member of the Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable. These webinars are offered in partnership between ALA Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable, ALA Intellectual Freedom Roundtable, and with our friends at Image Comics. All webinars are being recorded and will be made available online on the Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable website at ala.org/RT/GNCRT at a later date. So if you or anyone you know wasn't able to attend one of our webinars this week, have no fear. The recordings will be available to watch in the near future. In addition to these webinars, you can participate in Banned Books Week through Escape the Dead End of Censorship, a virtual escape room where you can demonstrate your knowledge of intellectual freedom. You can access the escape room at tinyurl.com/ifrt-bbw2020, and that web address is on our slide that's displayed right now as well. You can also let the world know you love comics and support the freedom to read them with GNCRT and IFRT tech tattoos that can be affixed to your laptop, tablet, or phone to proudly display your support for the work of our roundtables. Each tech tattoos can be purchased on the Freedom to Read Foundation store at ftrf.org/store, and that address is on the slide as well. If you have any questions for today's panelists, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. We will be monitoring questions throughout the webinar, and we have some time set aside at the end for questions from the audience, so please give us your questions. We'd love to answer them. All right, and now moving on to today's panel. Our title of the panel today is Unwelcome in the Comics Industry. It's not just libraries that have banned comics. Sometimes it's the comics industry itself. Our panelist and moderator will discuss how harassment serves as a form of censorship within the industry by creating unsafe and unwelcoming environments, and how awareness of these issues is important for librarians to understand. And now let me introduce our fantastic panelists and moderator. First is Lauren Mccubbin. She is a large-scale installation artist, experimental documentarian, illustrator, and editor. She is the Associate Professor and Chair of Illustration and Comics and Narrative Practice at Columbus College of Art and Design, house designer for MCM, and editor of Moonstruck and SFSX with Image Comics. She's drawn for McSweeney's, Marvel, Vertigo, Last Gasp, and Dark Horse. She was the art director for Image Comics and co-creator of the graphic novel Rent Girl with writer Michelle T. So welcome, Lauren. Next is Cena Grace, who is a writer and artist living in Los Angeles, California, who has earned prestigious nominations for the GLAAD Media Awards and the Prism Awards. He is best known for his slice of life memoirs, Self-Obsessed and Nothing Lasts Forever at Image Comics, the highly adored Jughead's Time Police at Archie Comics, and the critically acclaimed landmark Iceman series at Marvel. Current projects include Getting It Together at Image Comics, Ghosted in LA at Boom Studios, and read-only memoirs at IDW. So welcome, Cena. And lastly is Chloe Ramos. She is the book market and library sales manager at Image Comics, where she provides resources to librarians and educators looking to utilize comics in their institutions, not only as items to be acquired, but also as keys to facilitate increased patron engagement. In addition to her work, she is very passionate about being a Puerto Rican feminist art nerd. Welcome, Chloe. And our moderator today is Dan Wood, who is the Principal Librarian of Literacy and Youth Services at the Escondido Public Library. He has been working in libraries for over 20 years and understands the power of comics as a literary resource for librarians and educators and the need to reach readers where they are. Dan is a member of the American Library Association's Graphic Novel and Comics Roundtable. His most recent endeavors for the promotion of comics include paneling at New York and San Diego Comic-Cons and serving as member-at-large for the comics nonprofit Creators Assemble, Inc. So thank you all for being a part of our webinar today, and now I'm going to turn it over to Dan to get our conversation started.
All right, thank you all. I'm quite excited. When I got asked to do this, you should have heard me running around the room screaming, yay. So it was quite a pleasure to do this. So I know we have limited time today, so we're just going to roll right into the first question. And this is for all the panelists, of course. How does harassment serve as a form of censorship?
I will go first. So I'm going to speak from talking about my experience with my students, because I get a lot of questions from my students about, you know, I want to go online and promote my work, but I'm afraid of online. I'm afraid to engage because I don't want to get yelled at and I don't want to get harassed. And so I talk with students a lot about like, hey, this is, you know, these are the ways that professionals I know have dealt with this. And the harassment can definitely make people think that this is not a welcoming space for you. And especially with students, my students who are trans, that is one of the first things that they bring up, is that they think that if they come out as a trans creator online, they're going to immediately be targeted. And, you know, that place of fear, it does not engender creativity. It does not engender sharing. So that's, you know, that's been my experience with it. Cena?
Thanks for the baton pass, because otherwise I would have been like, I don't know when to go. I will speak from a few different perspectives, but, you know, jumping on to what Lauren said with regards to, I think, younger folks and students, when they see what happens on a bigger scale or what happens to people who may have thicker skins, it does scare people from even starting or even wanting to put themselves out there. So that's terrible, because it's snuffing a flame before it's even been, you know, before it's even risen. I think, though, from my own personal experience as someone who's kind of been at this for a minute and then did the Iceman series at Marvel, when you're dealing with online harassment, it creates a lot of problems that other things don't have to deal with. And I'm going to try and explain that a little bit better. But it's like, if you do a very safe version of Captain America by a very safe team of individuals, that book is going to sell tens of thousands of copies, and there won't be a problem besides the normal problems of making comics, which is getting everyone to do the stuff on time. But if you have a book like Iceman, where it's like, okay, this character is a gay man doing gay things while also saving the world, but he's still gay, by a gay guy with a Middle Eastern name who, you know, has a life outside of comics and does what he wants, and, you know, is not as easy to control as, again, just some sort of, you know, mellow dude or whatever. I'm mellow, but anyway, that's a lot of risks for the publisher. And they would be like, why do I want to do this? Why do we care? And then it's on the creator to do the best work possible, or do the most acceptable work possible, like what will just make everyone okay with me. So it stifles the creative process, because you're trying to make a book that everyone will like or that will sell well, rather than taking creative risks, or rather than, and that's the other thing too, is, you know, then some of these risks include pushing the story in a certain direction that may get you, you know, hate and vitriol online. And it's just so taxing on your mental health that you're like, all right, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to have that fight. I'm just going to, you know, have it be super, super safe. You know, and it's not always that way, but these are considerations that happen on all sides, not just from the creative, but from the publishing. When you're dealing with huge, huge IP and corporations and whatnot. So it's a weird, you know, it's not like people are telling you to stop, you're telling yourself to stop, which is, it's crazy. Chloe?
I think that is the, thank you. I think that all of those are really good points that really build off of one another. And I think that you can't overstate how damaging harassment is so insidious, because it can cause you to check yourself, because it can cause you to stifle your own creativity. It can cause you to never even take the creative step in the first place. I mean, there's a reason why bullying takes place in school. There's a reason why negative feedback is used, and it's because it works. And I think that it's impossible to escape for anyone. It just is a matter of how many social protections that you generally have, how close to the starting line you begin based on where you are in our societal matrix. I mean, even people like Robert Kirkman get harassed, and he, you know, he struggled like everybody else, but he still started a few steps ahead than, say, you know, a 12-year-old Black queer teenager would start, for example. So if they see someone who is at the top of the social pile, who still can't say something online without having a million people send him death threats or threaten to stop buying his incredibly successful book or complain about the TV show he has or call him mean names, what does that say to the person who knows for a fact that they're starting 5 steps behind, you know, that creator, even before they get the chance to maybe become a millionaire? You know, it's insidious. It's truly insidious. And that is why there have to be consequences, and there have to be people who stand up against that, because the people who harass, they know what they're doing.
They do. So that kind of leads perfectly actually into our next question. What actions can all of us take, creators, publishers, conventions, libraries, to ensure that the comics industry supports a safe and welcoming environment? And Chloe, why don't we start with you?
Oh, great, thank you. I think that there are things that you can do in the social sphere and things that you can do in the collection development and purchasing sphere, and those two things work together. The first thing that you have to do is make sure that you are a voice for those who are voiceless. So if you know of a group in your community that should be represented and isn't, or that is being vilified or harassed or ignored, it is up to you as a library institution to be a platform for those voices. I think that book displays are very important. I think that maintaining a diverse collection that really represents your community is important. It isn't enough to just buy graphic novels. It isn't enough to just retweet people, and it isn't enough to just you know, make a comment online, for example. You have to take your institution and look at it as a place where you can display these books, where you can make sure these books are a part of your collection and that people know they're a part of your collection. If all of your comic books by, say, independent small press publishers, or all of your zines are in a corner in the back of your branch where nobody can find them, they're not going to get checked out. And then they're going to get weeded, and then they're never going to get bought again. And books like them are not going to get bought again, which moves into the corporate sphere. If these books don't get bought, sometimes people don't get paid. I think a lot of people don't realize that not all publishers give advances, and that sometimes, especially with smaller publishers and the voices who are most likely to be harassed, who don't have the protection of the big two, those people may never see a dime. They may put this work in for years, potentially. They may struggle to get something published. They may find a small publisher who's willing to put it out. And if no one puts it in their collections and no one buys it, that person goes back to working 3 jobs and maybe never publishes again. And then the people who are harassing and saying, this book shouldn't be published, these people don't matter, nobody wants this, for example, they win.
And that's definitely something we don't want. I'm a wholehearted believer of you put those graphic novels up front and center, so as soon as someone walks in, they only have to go, what, 25 feet to see it, or 25 steps to see it. And you do author chats with the creators of those independent or not as well-known comics, so you can introduce them to the community to get the voice out there. That's so important. Cena, why don't we move over to you?
Well, Chloe, yeesh, like way to cheat off my test, took my answers. No, that was so eloquent. I think what I would add is, if, you know, there's a couple of things, and I'll be quick. I think that if you're in charge of a public space like a convention, you need to have a plan in place for when a creator comes to you and says, I'm experiencing harassment. Because I know for a fact a friend of mine was dealing with some really weird, threatening MAGA behavior at a convention because he had a trans pride flag. I'm trying not to tell a story because I don't remember how much of this was like publicly disclosed, maybe all of it, but anyway, and he felt like the convention, like, you know, didn't do much. But I've also heard that sometimes conventions do a lot when people are receiving threats to their physical well-being, and those creators will get like a bodyguard or something. I don't know what the answer is. That is up to those people to do the training to find out what those answers are. And to add to that, I think if you're in a publishing space, if you are, you know, in charge of a library, I don't know what what those roles are, but I think always try to find the resources to hire a third party to help train you and your staff about how to do better and be better for whatever, you know, the concern is. It's so not fair to put it on any of the individuals at work. It you know, it just creates a lot of conflicts and problems. And also that person doesn't have the training to know what to do. They only know their experience, and it just, you know, I know, finding money, just find it. I don't know. That's another question too, Pat. Where do we find the money to do all these things? You just do. Bake sales. And I think the last thing I'll say before going to Lauren, if you are the individual, if you are the fan, if you are the consumer, heck, even if you are like the production designer dealing with, you know, the book, it's okay to tell people you like their art. It's okay to be a fan. It goes a long way. People tend to not say when they love something. They tend to say when they hate something. And they think that just buying the thing is enough. But let me tell you, sorry, there's an emergency vehicle driving by my street. Hold on. It goes a long way. It goes a long way to tell someone you like something, and even doing that on the internet also helps too, because it sort of creates this validity too. But more to the point, be a fan. It makes it worth it. All right, Lauren.
Well, hello. So going back to some of the things that Chloe said, for, you know, spaces like libraries, and Chloe had said, you know, support the make sure that your collection reflects your not neighborhood, community. That was the word. Thank you. I think that going beyond that, actually, and if you do not have, if your community is not made up of people of color, or if you don't think that you have a lot of queer people in your community, put those books still front and center, and make sure that you are opening up your community to other ideas and other voices. And then along with that, like in the industry, I would love to see some sort of like social media training for newbies in publishing, right? Like, hey, this is how to deal with this stuff. This is how we will support you. That kind of like, you know, we've got your back moment, I think could be very important and very empowering for people. And
I want to, oh, real quick, sorry.
No, Cena, what?
Oh, sorry, Dan, when we get to the next question, will you remind me that I want to bounce off what Lauren said about social media?
Yes,
All right,
writing that down right now.
Okay.
Sorry
I
about
forgot what I was talking about. No. Okay. So, and lastly, I think with publishers, you know, yes, like the idea of publishers educating themselves, please do not put it on your authors. Please do not put it on your artists to tell you like, hey, what's right, what's wrong, what things, you know, are appropriate for who they perceive their audience to be. Right? I think that it's very important for publishers to learn to support different voices. And even in a point of supporting own, like things that are own voices, things that are written by people who have lived those experiences, I think are very important. And then the last thing with conventions, every convention needs to have a harassment policy in place. That and a very firm way of this is how we deal with these things. And I think for creators, especially bigger name creators who are going to these conventions, don't go to a convention if they don't have that in place, right? Support people who cannot speak up for themselves, who are not going to be able to say, hey, I don't feel safe here. You know, you want to use your power as a large creator to be like, hi, I want to make sure everyone is safe. I want to make sure my fans are safe. I want to make sure that other creators are safe. And I need to see that in writing from you. So those are my thoughts on that.
Those are some really good thoughts. And it's as if we know what we're talking about, which we do. So that's going to lead us into our third question. Cena, we'll start with you on this.
Okay.
So not all librarians are familiar with the ins and outs of the comics industry. What's something important that we should know about comics when it comes to forms of harassment?
Well, thank you I'm glad that I interrupted Lauren because now I have a better answer. We've been sort of talking about this or dancing around it, but a lot falls on the creator to know what to do and say and how to be and how to act and how to navigate. And you know, to be fair, like this is all new. Social media is very new, and we're all reacting to its power and influence over us. But that being said, it even goes down to like, there are now clauses in contracts about how you present yourself on social media, and that a publisher can cut you off if you do not, you know, act a certain way. And listen, we should all be professionals. Yes, like create what are they called, finstas, if you just need to be if you need to be nasty and you're making a middle grade book, like close friends. But that being said, you know, they say that they're like, do it right. And then you say to them, and I know this from personal experience, you say to them, hey, I'm getting bullied, can I have some help? And then they send you a PDF that basically is 2 pages of just don't engage. And it's like, that doesn't work. And also like, I just asked you for help, and like, you know, so creators are really left to fend for themselves. I don't know if that's anything that will help librarians in terms of figuring out the ins and outs of the comic industry. I also can say that not every publisher understands the importance of libraries. Not Image. Image does. DC does too. You can. I think Valiant does as well. Anyway, I think Dark Horse does too. I'll stop. But you know, so I think it sucks because you do have to advocate for what you do, and it's so stupid. And also, you have to explain when you're talking to a representative from a publisher, you have to explain to them exactly what you're looking for in terms of how you can get people to read the books at the library. Like, I know the big two really struggle with. It's like, okay, I like Wonder Woman, but what do I order? Like, you have 10,000 Wonder Woman comics. And luckily DC knows, like, whenever there's a movie, they're like, okay, here are the characters and the story arcs that are relevant, you know, and I think things like that are really, you know, useful and helpful, but there's a lot of hand holding, and that's okay. That's okay. You just have to be okay with it. Anyway, I have so much power now. I'm gonna, or no, Dan, you pass the baton. I don't even do this.
Okay. We'll jump over to Chloe.
I think that those are all really good observations. I think the library as an institution, you know a lot about the comics industry. You know a lot about, and I'm gonna be a broken record about this. You know a lot about community. You know a lot about building community, and that's an important thing to remember. Is that as big as Marvel might seem because of, you know, strategic partnerships and the film franchises and whatnot, comics is still sort of an inclusive, a small community of creators. No matter where you go, we really do sort of all know at least somebody who knows another creator. It's all 2 degrees of separation. So it is up to you to be aware that community is what you can use to help all of these creators. It is up to you to make strategic purchases. And it is up to you to know that everyone that's working out here, just like Cena said, we're all simultaneously connected, but a little bit on our own. And so be there to help people. So just like was mentioned earlier, make sure that you know who your local creators are and bring them in. It doesn't always have to be a creator from, you know, who has worked on Iron Man. You can also just see who's making zines, who's making webcomics, who's just drawing stuff on their homework in their high school and needs a platform. And the more that you are community minded and try to bring people to the table, the more you are helping the comics industry because other creators notice, you know, and it's up to all of us to pull each other a little bit further along.
All right, Lauren.
Yeah, so I definitely, you know, I agree with everything that Cena and Chloe have already said. To go along with the idea of how, like, things that you need to know about the comics industry if you're in the library business, that most creators are doing this on their own they have some institutional support from their publishers, but publishers have a lot of creators to look after. And for smaller creators or creators for books that are maybe not getting as much attention, that's going to mean that they're not asked to do library talks. And so if there is a book that you are championing or interested in that maybe isn't one of the big name books, like bringing those creators in, that is a really big deal, especially for creators who are just starting out. Like bringing in people who are maybe not getting all of the attention. And then also, you know, and I know that like libraries tend to have like, you know, this is what we're focusing on this month. This is what we're focusing on this season. And looking, like taking a good look at what's being published and saying, okay, how can smaller creators maybe fall into these things? You know, how do creators of color, although, you know, I gotta say, maybe don't just bring in Black creators during February. You know, making sure that those things are always part of your conversation about how you do your programming at your library. I love what Chloe said about like reaching out to your local creators, because you may discover that in your like local community, there's a big thirst for this kind of community or like places to meet and have these discussions, having graphic novel book clubs. Like, you know, I just got my mother-in-law to do that with her book club. They're all reading March right now. And for some of them, it's their very first graphic novel. And so for maybe that's a way to like, you know, again, bring in people who would not be normally reading that kind of stuff. Those are my ideas.
I want to add before we move on. Also, I think it's important for librarians and libraries as institutions to remember that you can contact us. We're not Disney. You can email questions that you want. And one of the things that Cena had said earlier about, you know, I want Wonder Woman books, but I don't, there's a million of them, and where do I even start with expanding my collection? Or our community really wants books that tackle this specific topic, and I have no idea where to even start with that. You can just email us those questions. We are super happy to provide you all with information and resources and reading lists and you know, things that you may not even know that you need, which I think is especially important to remember for those of you who may be dealing with a limited budget and somebody who's in charge of buying your graphic novels who maybe doesn't know a whole lot about them. You don't have to be an expert. That's what we're all here for.
Isn't it? Being a librarian personally that has taken advantage of that, it is very, very useful. All right, so how has the historical portrayal of women and the enforcement of gender roles in comics fueled present-day harassment in comics? So whoever wants to take that first.
I'll just scream for 10 minutes if you guys are okay with that. I'm just gonna
15 minutes before the question, so let's all just scream.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't, you can't separate media representation and popular culture representations of a person, concept, or thing from how a society and a culture perceives and interacts with that person, concept, or thing. If every female creator is simultaneously Lois Lane, as she's a smart reporter, but oh my God, why is she always getting kidnapped? And she falls over a lot. That's weird, right? If every female or female identifying character that you have has legs that are 1.5 times the length of their torso, and also looks like they might weigh 30 pounds, and 20 pounds of that is probably their boobs. You know, what does that say? What does that say to young people or even to adults about what it means to be a woman? If the only way to be powerful is to be one thing, the only way to interact with your world is in this one pipeline, I can't oversell it. It's absolutely critical that portrayals of women in comics match the complexity of women as human beings. And the industry has not always done that very well. And so that has led to the public thinking in some instances that there is a particular way to be a woman, and that it is up to them to police women, period. That's it. That was my scream.
An eloquent scream.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to Cena because he spoke. Haha.
Well, as a man, let me tell you what I think about this. Well,
man, ladies.
in that, listen, ladies, I got some opinions about this. I only have observations. You know, one of those things is that sex still sells, no matter how much we want to pretend that it doesn't. Harley Quinn is super, super, super popular and super bankable. I think she's also a great space for, you know, someone like Amanda Conner to subvert a lot of what has been done to that character. But that's my other observation, is that most of the time, not all the time, most of the time, if there is a complicated female character in mainstream comics, she's not written by complicated female writers. She's written by Greg Rucka. And that is something that I think, you know, needs to change and is important. I'm looking at notes, by the way. I'm not like looking down because this is hard for me to talk about. That too. But, you know, I think it's like, women are usually only written by women in YA, I've noticed, or it's like the super safe, easy book over there, rather than maybe like a female-led X-Men team, which I don't even think those are happening right now because Jonathan Hickman's like, it's all one big mutant orgy that I tell you what happens. I don't have opinions. So, you know, that's, I think the way editors are even casting writers on books is fueled by these like, just like largely enforced gender rules and gender roles. And that's all I'll say.
Can we use that as a, I know I'm not in charge of this because I don't work for that company, but if we use big mutant orgy as a full quote on the next.
Big mutant orgy.
Please.
Then I'll follow up on that. You know, if there wants to be a big mutant orgy, why the heck not, right?
As long as it's written by a straight white guy.
So talking about like sexual representation or gender-based representation, you know, working on SFSX with Tina Horn has been just a giant pleasure for me, which is hilarious to kind of say about that book because it is all about like the politics of pleasure and who gets to have pleasure and what role pleasure plays in a society, and the idea of criminalizing pleasure. One of the things that I love with Tina's books is that gender doesn't stand in the way of character representation being complex. You know, there are queer female presenting villains, right? And, you know, there are women of color who have very complicated inner lives, who may not always do the thing that you think is right. And I think that for me, that's the kind of complexity that I'm looking forward to seeing, is that that just because someone is a female presenting character, that they don't need to be virtuous and they don't always need to be right, because men are allowed to screw up and women are not. And I think that that's something I want to see more of. And then as far as like creators, again, speaking as a professor, 85% of my students are female or female presenting. And that is the way of comics in the wave of the future. We're seeing more and more female presenting or, you know, both cis and trans, people who want to write stories and who want to draw stories. And I think that creating the space for them is important. And we're going to see more of them. And they might not want to draw Iron Man. You know, they might want to create completely different stories. And there needs to be a place for them outside of those big two conversations as well.
So I think the last three questions we have are very important. I would like to get to them. So we've got about another 5-10 minutes before we get to the audience questions. So not that I want to rush you, I could do this for 3 hours personally. Time constraints. So what hurdles must the comics industry overcome when it comes to harassment? Lauren, can we start with you?
I mean, support, you know, it's just like they just have to support their creators. Publishers have to support their creators. Other creators have to support other creators, especially if you're a creator with a larger voice. And also like refusing to be part of groups that denigrate and look to humiliate creators online. Like if you're a creator who's allied with any of those Comicsgate bros, like I want nothing to do with you. I want nothing to do with your books. Oh, and even if you're like, well, you know, I just draw things. It's like, yeah, no, you hang out with Nazis. I'm cool ignoring you. I don't think that it's, you know, and more creators drawing that fine line, you know, like there's this idea that like telling somebody that what they're doing is a social wrong is somehow bullying as well. And it's just like, yeah, no, that's just them being held responsible for their actions and having to live with the consequences. And there's a big difference, J.K. Rowling. So that's not comics. So why doesn't somebody else talk?
Yeah, I think that we all need to realize, I think a lot of us have, but we all need to realize that there is no neutral position. You'll get people screaming at you all day long, you know, just stick to your comics. Well, when did comics become political, and all these bad faith arguments? No one participates in society in a neutral manner. And corporations and companies like to pretend that they do. And I'm not going to go into the moral issues there because we really will be here for 4 hours. But you have to be willing to take a stand. There is a difference of opinion this is everybody's freaking Facebook image. A difference of opinion is I prefer coffee over tea, not I would prefer you not to have fundamental human rights. And you can't work with creators who honestly believe, like the Comicsgate idiots, that there are some races who are better than others. Sorry, you just can't. And if someone is being harassed by those people, or if you find out that someone that you've been working with is one of those people or takes any of these harmful stances, you should stop working with them. Stop giving them money. Stop giving them a platform. It is up to people in power to protect those with less power, period.
So yeah, I think y'all have said some amazing things about online harassment and cyberbullying. And I just want to add, with regards to sexual harassment, having one-on-one conversations with people who there are more than allegations against. There are websites dedicated to tracking their behavior. You sometimes have to just tell that person about the consequences on a one-on-one basis. There was someone that, you know, I didn't know, and then I found out. And you have to just have that conversation with them where it's like, this isn't okay. I didn't know it was happening. I'm really angry because like what you did affected my friends. Also, don't leave it to the survivors to fend for themselves or to move forward. Something I have had to do now, and I'm happy to do it, but I'm also heartbroken to do it because the answers suck, is if you're going to start working with some people, go do a temperature read, go talk to their colleagues in private, make sure they know it's a safe space to share with you, and ask, is that person a secret asshole? And the answers are not good, but you know what? And then also ask that person, what would you like me to do about it? Because sometimes they're actually scared for their physical safety. That's how real this stuff is. Follow their lead, you know, and that's that. You know, if they want you to just basically like cool off on that working relationship and have no one know why, you know, no project started there, that's okay. But it's stuff like that. Like, you have to confront it, and you have to, unfortunately right now, be discreet about how you support, but sometimes you don't. You just have to, case by case, all the time, constantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Neutrality in the face of oppression supports the oppressor. You know, like not being willing to take a stand because you might rock a boat, then that's whose side you're on. I mean, and that's pretty simple. What Cena was saying about like knowing who you're working with for creators, especially, the hardest thing has been when you find out a creator that you enjoy or a creator that you are friends with has done some horrible things. As a reader, as a supporter of their work, saying, well, you know, it's about the art, not the artist. No, it's not. It's, you know, it's your choice. You get to make the choice whether or not you support that artist. And if that dude, because it is mostly dudes, is your bro, and you don't want to say anything because bro code, you are on the side of the oppressor. You are making that choice. And that is a choice that you can make. We don't have to enjoy it, and we don't have to put up with it.
Yeah, I think the support is the most important part. I would also like to add that it's okay to feel as a reader or an audience member, if you're a librarian or a patron who has enjoyed comic books from somebody that you later find out is a problem, is an abuser. It's okay to look back on your memories of those books and still have good memories. I think that a lot of guilt goes along with finding out that somebody that you really respected or that you were friends with, or maybe even that changed your life in terms of your reading experience, really fundamental voices, sometimes turn out to be secret assholes or monstrous in some way. And that doesn't make you a bad person for having liked that book. And it doesn't diminish your experiences with that book in the past. It affects the decisions that you make going forward with that creator. And I think that is that's the important thing to remember, so you don't let guilt or shame keep you from making a difference.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not talking about banning books or burning books or, you know, I am talking about, yeah, what do you do going forward with this information? And as somebody who has had that exact experience very recently, you know, it was heartbreaking and hard and horrible. And I completely and totally stand with the women who have been hurt in these situations.
Definitely. So while I look over the audience questions real fast, do you have any other creators you would recommend fighting against harassment that you would recommend that our audience reads?
I'll go real fast. Mariko Tamaki and Alex DeCampi. Boom, next.
Yeah, I love Alex. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
Kelly Sue DeConnick, who couldn't be here today.
Definitely Kelly Sue, definitely Alex DeCampi. I love Vita Ayala, everything they do.
Oh, yes.
Steve Bungles, T. Franklin is someone who's experienced a lot of harassment and has fought back against it, and all allies. And I also would like people to support Akiko Higashimura. Some of you may know her from Princess Jellyfish. She fights back in her own way against Japanese stereotype that she experiences, and one of her titles she goes to on permanent hiatus because a harassment campaign was started against her. So I encourage you all to look up the book that she chose to take off the shelves before it even got there because men were.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
Yeah, could you repeat the creator and the titles one more time, please?
Akiko, A-K-I-K-O, Higashimura, Higashimura, and the title of the book that she had to put on permanent hold is Himo Zaidu. I look up anything that she's done. All of her work is fantastic, and she deserves our support. And hopefully one day that book might be translated into English and published here. I hope.
I want to shout out one more person, small press publisher, Kurta Munir, who is a trans creator and publisher who runs Diskette Press out of Ann Arbor. And she's doing mostly small run books, but especially if you are a library in Michigan who is looking for creators to have come in and talk about small publishing, she is just absolutely fantastic and a wonderful speaker.
And Iron Circus and Rosarium Publishing, and I'm done.
All right, I'm going to abbreviate some of the questions here. Kaylee asked, she mentions that graphic novels are very popular at her academic library. What is the best advice or best way to contact an author or an artist for a presentation, and how to be taken seriously?
Email their publisher And you can also try getting a hold of people on social media. A lot of people use that as an outlet. Just remember that some people are too busy to get back right away, and that's not because they don't like you, it's just because a million people are asking them. But yeah, email us.
Yeah, and I think most creators take libraries very seriously.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. That those are the answers.
All right. Livia asked, what advice would you give someone doing comics?
That's a big question.
So
I
I guess
have an entire 4 years of curriculum dedicated to that.
so take Lauren's class.
Do everything. Try everything. Start small. Read publisher FAQs before pretending you don't know what to do. That's not, I don't mean to be rude. YouTube is your friend. Learn a lot about the creators you admire. They get asked that question a lot, and they'll tell the interviewers about their paths and their journeys, because we're all like low-key narcissists and just we'll talk about ourselves all day. The internet is your friend. The answers are there. And then just remember, you're always a student, and that you need to keep getting better, and you gotta fail on the clock. Like, that's just it. Like,
Failure is so important.
I've made hundreds of pages of bad comics to make hundreds of pages of mediocre comics.
And like the most important thing I would say is, for a creator just starting out, make a comic. Don't talk about the comic that you want to make the comic. And then congratulations, you're a comic creator. That is literally all that it takes. It's a very democratic medium in that way.
All right. Do we have any other audience questions? Now's your time to get them in before forever hold your peace. No, I'm sure we'll be able to answer them at another point, Twitter or email us, and hopefully get to the right person. Anyone? Going once? Twice?
Oh, we got one.
Okay, let's see what we got here. Question is, how do graphic novels, narratives industry work in relation with the comic book industry? I'm thinking more of the publishers who publish graphic narratives as books that were not necessarily published as comic books first. Do the two industries work similarly, respect each other, etc.? Are these similar problems in the terms of the ones that we have addressed today?
I think to answer
so like book. Will someone paraphrase that for me?
So I think basically books that were not originally published as graphic novels, and how they kind of work together, and if there are similar issues that we were talking about today.
Okay.
The larger publishers right now who have started to dip their toe into graphic novels are looking into like they know that they have to have editors and publicists and people in their industry who understand the comic book industry and who understand graphic novels. I mean, that's when I first started out, the first graphic novel that I signed to a larger publisher with, they had no idea how to do the book. And it was being adapted from a prose book that they were like, okay, this is a 150-page graphic novel. Then after the script got adapted, it was 300 plus pages. And it's like, oh yeah, well, we weren't expecting that. So, I mean, they are learning from the mistakes they have made.
Yeah, I think that comic books do face the same challenges that graphic novels face in terms of harassment and sales pressures and things like that. Comic books can be collected into graphic novels, but the reverse basically never happens. They're related forms that sometimes overlap, but don't always overlap. They're a man and a wolf and a werewolf. That's the closest I get to like an analogy for how comics and graphic novels sort of interrelate. And it's important to support all of them. We live in a capitalist society. If you don't buy it, it doesn't get bought. And if people are yelling that it's garbage all the time as a form of targeted harassment, then less people buy it, and then it doesn't get made, etc.
Yeah, I think, comics basically, and this is just like a brief, like it's a layer of it all. of the tapestry. I'm not saying the totality of it, but I know that like if you're doing a comic book, they look at the single issues as the marketing budget for the collected edition, whereas if you have a graphic novel, there might be like a marketing budget in place depending on the publisher, and different lead times. But it, you know, but that's like, there's just not a lot of marketing in both, unless you're, you know, like First Second. Does First Second even have great marketing? I don't know, but their books are amazing.
They
So
do pretty well.
okay, good to hear. I mean, like, I feel like I know about First Second books all the time when they come out. So, you know, it's, I think that's kind of just a layer, an observation, a thing to know. So if the floppy books do well, then that helps the book get collected. That helps even make the decision of if the book gets collected. Sometimes a person doesn't even get that, which it's like, you know, in COVID times, I'm like counting all my blessings, and it's like, oh, right, like my books got collected. What a blessing. So yeah, that's all I have to add to that.
All right, I think we're basically towards the point where we'll be wrapping this up. Of course, thank you for everyone for participating. Any last pieces of advice or something you want to communicate to our audience?
Someone said wait for,
librarians.
yes, thank you, librarians. Someone just said wait for real. Yeah, like Kyle Baker's Plastic Man run, multiple Eisner Award winning, super funny series. I don't think the last story arc has ever been collected in trade paperback form. Also, the first volume and the second volume are completely different formats. Because for as darling as the book was, it did not sell well. You know, so it's like sometimes, yeah, having the floppy is the only way to know how the story ends. Parting thoughts are just thank you for everyone who's here and trying, and librarians and retailers and everybody who gives a crud about comics, because everything's on the line more than ever before. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for all of the support that the librarians have given to comics. I mean, it's made a huge difference for Moonstruck. It was the reason that we decided to go straight to trade instead of doing single issues anymore, because we just realized that the library wanted them faster. So that was fantastic. And Olivia, I will DM you my address so that you can send me your comic, because I'm excited to read it.
Everyone, thank you to librarians. Just like Lauren had said, there are several books even that Image has published, so I would extrapolate that out to other publishers and assume that it's industry wide, that we're not necessarily selling well, or weren't selling as well in floppies, that if it weren't for the support of and the love of librarians, might not have been collected to trades. It was your feedback and how well those books, when they were collected, were doing with you all that sometimes made the difference between a series being unfortunately canceled early and making the move to trades, or the difference between us deciding from the get-go that trades would be the way to go, was just knowing what you guys have been passionate about. To the question about comics and floppies, as someone who worked in a library myself, cataloging floppies is a nightmare. I believe that might be actual hell, is being the person responsible for taking care of single issue comics in the library collection. So I would recommend, if there are titles out there that are coming out, check out our digital collections and the digital collections that may be offered by other publishers, because you can get those single issues in a digital format, and people reading those and buying those can make a difference later when they become trades or hardcovers. Yeah, check out digital options for single.
All right, I think that's going to about wrap us up. Brandy, I'm going to hand it back to you now.
Okay, so I can't bring my video back, but I can speak. So first, on behalf of the Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable and Freedom to Read Roundtable, I just want to also say thank you so much to the panelists for taking the time out of your schedules to hang out with us today and have this really important discussion about a topic that isn't always easy to talk about. And I mean, to echo Dan, I could have listened to this for 3 hours too. So it's sad that we only had an hour, but thank you so much for your insight and for this great discussion. And thank you, Dan, for taking the time to moderate our panel today.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
You were fantastic, so thank you. And then tomorrow, we've had this series of webinars all week long, and tomorrow we have one more. Tomorrow's webinar is titled, Comics, Are These Real Books? So Charles Sewell, great title, isn't it?
And are real books.
Charles Sewell, who authored Undiscovered Country and Daredevil, will be in conversation with Matthew No, our GNCRT president-elect, on why comics so often wind up on annual most challenged book lists, what comics are most often challenged, and what you can do to overcome negative opinions of comics. So you can register for the panel. Let me see in the chat. I'm going to send a link to the chat where you can go to register for tomorrow's panel, or you can follow us online on social media at libcomics, that's LIBCOMIX, and the hashtag BannedBookWeek 2020. All right, and with that, I think we are ready to end our webinar for today. Thank you again so much for attending, and I hope that some of you can join us again tomorrow. And I'm waving, but you can't see me, but goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks again for all this.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye. This was